So did you go to Tulum to celebrate that, or what was that about?
I went to Tulum for my cousin, who's like my sister's, her birthday.
Okay.
Yeah, so we went recently.
You know, I had to get back to
I
that.
know.
I had to get back to that because that story was crazy. That story was crazy.
It was a crazy story.
What's up, my people? We're in here checking in today with another episode of Inside the Vibe. I'm Yoru, and today I'm here with guest Herrana, who's a model, event curator, tastemaker. I want to say so many things. Business owner, and yeah, we're just here to have a conversation about self-realization today. So before we get into that, we're gonna start off with Set the Flow, which is a little introductory piece that we have to the show. And so what I have for you today is, let me actually whip this up. So we have a bunch of animals, and you're gonna choose two while the other ones try to kill you. All right, so we have option one is a hunter with a rifle, which I guess is a human, so not an animal. 3 brown bears, 4 lions, 5 gorillas, 7 buffaloes, 10 crocodiles, 15 wolves, 50 hawks, and 10,000 rats. So you have to choose 2 of those while the rest try to kill you. And you only got to survive for like an hour.
Oh my God. First of all, this is so random.
It is. That's how we got to start it off. We got to make it comfortable.
I hate rats, so they have to be on my side.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like 10,000 rats by itself, like, I feel like that's just a long day for anybody.
Yeah, like I can't handle that. Like,
So the other
no.
options, 50 hawks, which that doesn't really do anything for me personally.
You know, actually, I would take the hawks because they can actually carry a body mass like the size of a deer. So
Right,
they
okay.
could take out.
And you're smaller too, so they could.
Yeah,
okay.
I could just like hop on there.
And you only have to survive for an hour, so I feel
Yeah.
like you might be straight on
And
that.
I'm small. I feel like they could carry me and fly me out.
But you think they can move fast enough to get you away from 4 lions and 5 gorillas?
If I'm in the air, yeah.
I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that. All right, cool. So safe to say we both may not survive, but you know, I guess it's an opportunity to see what happens. Cool. So, Herrana. The first thing I have to ask you today is, I know you have a lot going on with Checha Studios. I know you even do some work. I don't know if are you still doing work with Blue Footprint Project? No, I was like
Not directly, but it's still like running at Rutgers.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
And you founded that.
Yeah.
So how did they kind of operate without you present? Like, did you pass that on to somebody or?
So with Blue Footprint Project, it was a initiative that I wanted at Rutgers. Oftentimes what I've realized with, you know, like our different groups and activities in college, especially that had to do with government or social impact work, it was oftentimes being led by non-minorities or people that didn't look like me. So I felt a bit frustrated, and I also felt like there was a barrier of accessibility when it comes to Black folks actually being present into these spaces. And I think oftentimes what people will say is like, we're not excluding anybody, but they're not interested. But you need to create room for people to participate. So that's why I wanted to create that initiative where, you know, Black folks, immigrants can speak on campus about different issues that were happening around the globe. So I actually had to go back and forth a lot with the administration because you can't have duplicates in like student organizations. So they'd be like, if you want a human rights organization, they already exist. So they kept giving me the list of why do we need one that specifically caters to this audience. And we got rejected a couple of times, like 3. And then my last year in grad school is when it got officially like became an organization at Rutgers. And then now, you know, different students have just been taking on the work. And it's one of those initiatives where I find it so crazy that it exists completely without me. Like I have no involvement. And that makes me really happy because one of the things that's important to my work is I don't want it to be centered or led just by me. Yeah. Because that means it doesn't really need to exist if it only caters to you. So to see it still exist after now 5 years is proof of how important it was for it to exist.
Do you believe Chucha Studios, right? Do you believe that could operate without you like in the same breath, because the name has a personal meaning to you. And even though the direction, like in Blue Footprint Project, right? Those, I feel like they don't operate the same exact space, but they have a similar direction in what you're trying to do with them. Do you think Chucha Studios could operate without you in the same way, even though it's like personal?
I think so.
Okay.
I do. I think the name is personal because it's my mom's name.
But the mission,
The mission is so much bigger.
Okay.
And I have seen it even change how folks think of systemic change when it comes to production. So even with the different shoots that we do or anything that I produce, I always try to hire within our community and really thinking about how can we tie it back to proper storytelling. And working with different artists as a producer and also a director, I've noticed folks actually questioning themselves, okay, we can actually do this. Why can't we think about this a little bit more extensively? So I have seen it being carried in different forms outside of just Chucha Studios overall. So
Chucha Studios, what is the mission of Chucha Studios?
Mission. So our, mission statement and as an organization is we're a production company and a creative agency that ties in systemic change and storytelling. So the whole idea is, how do we tell stories about our community that actually brings visibility? And it really is important to me, especially when I moved to New York and I started modeling, and during 2020 and George Floyd, I noticed I was getting casted because these brands needed to have Black folks on the screen. They did their little statement on Juneteenth, it became a holiday. But oftentimes what you would see is they were actually utilizing my Blackness for their marketing value.
Rather than understanding the actual cause.
Exactly. Just because you casted a Black model does not mean your brand is investing in Black stories.
Just marketing.
Exactly. So that's where Chucha Studios really came about, is challenging these brands when they are bringing visibility and casting and utilizing our likeness for marketing value. How are you actually taking it a step further? How are you actually connecting, if you're a sports brand and you're shooting like street basketball, how are you actually catering to kids that actually live that reality and really feeding into that community as well? And that's where that gap and where we fit into it.
I think that brings up a good question, because with companies, it's easy to kind of hop on board to what's working and what's new, even if casting models like you, or allowing a narrative that's already in motion to hop on it to make it seem like you're on the right side of history, but you're really just on the right side of the dollar. Because things that are socially, I guess, gaining traction, there's always money behind that. So do you think, was it hard for you to kind of find a way to do what you love artistically through the guys at Chucha Studios? Because you guys have a lot of campaigns that empower women, empower impoverished communities, but there's always the artistic component in those, I want to say initiatives or projects, campaigns. Was that hard to find a way to kind of merge your creative side also with your intrinsic mission? What do you want to kind of give and put out into the world, or was that a normal thing for you?
I think it was a mixture a bit, because when I first started really working creatively, I would say behind the lens, it really stemmed from anxiety, because I used to have really bad anxiety when I first moved to New York in 2019, and I started going to therapy, and my therapist was like, why don't you pick up photography and go around and shooting people when you take your walks? Because I moved 6 months before the pandemic, and everybody used to do the walk right before sunset at 5 p.m. I never missed my walks.
Yeah, that was the only outside some people were even seeing.
Yeah, it was a crazy time when you think about it. So at that time, I just was shooting people in my neighborhood, and then I just started documenting different community centers and a garden. And that's when I was like, I want to do a story about the community garden. And that's where I started, kind of working behind the scenes and then learning what it's like to produce. I didn't even know the title of what I was doing, producing, sound, nothing. I didn't know anything. I just was doing it. And I'm really grateful that I took my time before defining what I wanted to do and exploring it without knowing. Because I think in our generation, and right now with social media, everybody's like, what's your brand? What do you do? And it's shoved down your throat. So I'm happy I took my time to understand what I wanted and who I am before I formalized it overall.
Okay. And you think therapy like allowed you to get to that place?
Yes,
So you
definitely.
think therapy works?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, like definitely. And I think it's you have to understand also you're evolving and you're learning yourself every stage. Like every year I'm finding new things out like about myself and building a relationship. And then sometimes like some versions of myself I'm very frustrated with. So through therapy, I'm starting to also be kinder with myself and understand myself, because every year or even every day I surprise myself. I'm like, where did this come from? I didn't even know I had this feature of this personality. So just learning this relationship with myself as I get older as well.
So like in your walk with therapy and understanding who you are and kind of waiting to kind of classify what it is you do creatively, do you feel you are currently in the optimal lane of like creativity for yourself?
Yes, definitely. I feel like I'm truly where I need to be, especially going back to Ethiopia in December. I haven't been back home in 8 years. So to do a project back home and to, you know, see where I grew up, my childhood home, to see my family again, and to even go to my childhood church that I went to every Sunday till I moved to the US. It just reminded me what I'm doing is so much bigger than me. So even those moments where I had imposter syndrome, it kind of goes away because it's not about me. It's so much bigger than that. And I think going home made me realize like I'm exactly where I need to be.
Like, so it kind of seems like can be a heavy mission when you kind of mix a lot of the things you stand for into one. Like, how do you find time to kind of like step away and like do things for yourself?
I don't know. I think that's like my honest response. Like, I don't want to even create fluff. Like, it's definitely one of my struggle points. I don't know how to take things slowly. Like, I take everything very seriously. So I don't know how to just let something be a hobby, even with photography.
So you're obsessive? Like, would you say you have obsessive personality?
Yeah, a little bit. Like if I can never do something simple. And it's a good thing, but also I don't know how to just enjoy something for what it is for myself. Like even with photography or filmmaking, it was for therapy, it was for me to control my anxiety. It was not supposed to be a Chucha Studios where I'm going to Ethiopia to shoot something and creating all these things. In a sense, it's a good thing. You know, I'm very happy with it, but it's also one of those things I'm trying to just let something be my enjoyment. And for now, it's music, which is, I love music and I love collecting. So as much as like, you know, I want to learn how to DJ or anything, I'm like, Herrana, it's for yourself. I will not let that be something where I turn it into work.
Like from a hobby to another job?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't want to transform hobbies into jobs. That's like my number one thing now.
Yeah, I find that like the character traits people have that make them successful are also kind of the same ones that can make them fail. It's almost like the same two sides of the same coin. Because I feel like myself, I also can obsess, but sometimes it's to the point where I look up and I'm like, the people are looking around you like, yo, you gotta take it easy.
Yep.
But like, I don't know how anymore. So I think it's a good balance to kind of try to find, but sometimes we don't find it. So you said you went home to Ethiopia recently. And when was the last time you visited before that?
8 years. So when was that? 2015, 2016, something around there. Yeah.
So do you not have like time to travel period or like?
I think for that, it was just more of like if I was ready, you know, for me, like moving to the US really came from a space of like losing my parents, like my mom and everything, and having to move. So it was a very emotional trip that I have to emotionally prepare myself. And I kept procrastinating going back home, even though so much of my work is deep rooted within my culture. You know, even my huge tattoo on my back is the Lalibela cross. Like, so it's so important to me, even in my style, like everything that I do. So to go back home, I had to be in a clear head. And I think everything happens for a reason. And I really feel like God wanted me to go at this time, especially receiving a grant from Shea Moisture. And they told me I can do anything I want with the project. So when I said, can I do a film in Ethiopia? They said, go. So to also go back and feel empowered and redefine my own experience with Ethiopia as an adult really helped. So I do think everything happens for a reason. And I do feel like God made me wait as long as he did for me to go at this exact moment.
Okay, so you talk about the movie that you're creating, and then congratulations on the grant from
Thank
you said Shea Moisture. Okay, congrats, shout out to Shea. So I see like a lot of the projects you do, there seems to be like a common theme of like community and support and coming together. Can we expect to see that in the movie?
Of course. I mean, it's
In
like
what ways?
I mean, that's the whole part of the film, is really speaking about the experience of women and girls in the global south, specifically in Ethiopia, but in many countries as well. And it touches on 4 themes of education, forced marriage, and also about climate justice. So the film is called The River, and it talks about how, you know, like water access. Oftentimes in Ethiopia, when women go to these different rivers, and it's really important for like fetching water, cleaning, and even in Ethiopia, I remember when I grew up near a river, you would see people like washing their clothes by different streams, but oftentimes that's also a place that's made women vulnerable to gender-based violence. Like there's so many kidnappings, there's so many different violence that happen. So I really wanted to shed light on that complicated relationship that women have with water access and our different intersectional relationship we also have within our culture. As beautiful as it is, there's also a different side to it. I also wanted the film to be very honest, especially in this day and age where everything is black and white, especially when we talk about social issues, because everybody's like the cancel culture, like you have to stand on one place, that we don't really have honest conversations, that things are very complicated. And that's what I wanted with the film, is to shed light on the reality that there's so many different conversations that we can have. So I'm very excited, you know, to also work with a production company in Ethiopia. I didn't really bring anybody from the US. I truly invested in the creativity in Ethiopia that's already present that you don't really see. And I don't think they get enough credit for it. So I feel very grateful to work with Kine's production, with my DP, Teddy, and my EP with Frey. We did casting, and it was beautiful to work on set, and you know, it was fun. They made fun of my Amharic sometimes, if you're listening, but we got there.
Are you gonna be in the movie, or are you more like a behind the camera role?
Completely behind the camera. So I directed and wrote it, so I'm completely behind.
So would this be like, I guess, your first like credits, I guess is what they call them?
Yes, it's like really my director debut, so.
And is there a date in mind, or is that still like?
So it's coming out this summer in June, and then in July, so in New York. It won't be available for streaming platforms till next year, but we are in post-production now.
Dope.
So we're almost at the finish line.
So is most of the filming done?
Yeah.
Okay, dope.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. We filmed everything in a month.
Okay. So did you go to Tulum to celebrate that, or what was that about?
I went to Tulum for my my cousin, who's like my sister. It's her birthday.
Okay.
Yeah, so we went recently.
You know how to get back to that.
I know.
I had to get back to that because that story was crazy. That story was crazy.
It was a crazy story.
Okay. So can you tell us? I know you were saying like when you went to Ethiopia, you had to be like emotionally prepared. Like, were you emotionally prepared for Tulum?
I guess till it took the interesting turn. I think the thing I've realized this year in like shedding light on Tulum and this crazy situation where that happened to us there, I think one of the things that I've realized this year alone is my mortality. And you know, when you're young, you don't feel it as much. Yeah, you do not. And then as you get older, I don't know, and I'm very, especially going to Ethiopia, I think I've reconnected with my spirituality and my religion a lot more. So even this year, I feel like God has put me in different situations, whether it was my health or even, there was a grocery store I went to every day and I walked past at 4 p.m. By 6 p.m. it blew up.
This was in
Brooklyn.
Oh, Brooklyn.
Yes.
Wow.
If you look it up on Bushwick, like when I tell you like, and I remember I was walking out and I was like, why is everybody outside? And then I looked at it and I'm like, there's no way. That's and insane. Then even my friends called me, they're like, you go there every day. And I'm like, yes. So it was one of those situations, like even in Tulum when we like were confronted with like a really weird situation, that I was just like, you know, every day I'm reminded that this can go away at any given moment. And I feel very grateful to be alive, like every day.
Do you mind walking us through the situation that you're speaking about?
And to Lou,
Yes.
no, let's leave it. It was a crazy situation. I just want to leave it, but
Okay.
yeah, I think my mortality has been very apparent to me in a sense that I feel very grateful to be alive. And I try not to let the little things get to me anymore. I feel like I'm very anal, like with my work and my career and really showing up in my friendships and my family dynamic, that I sometimes like lose myself in the day-to-day. But this year, with just a lot of situations, I've come to terms like anything could happen. So I want to be very grateful and take in that I'm exactly where I need to be. And sometimes like some things just don't work out, and that's very okay.
Do you think there's a reason why like this year that's a theme for you? Like I guess more mortality, or what you kind of can learn from understanding that it?
I think it's like with my health stuff, like I was dealing with this year, definitely. Like I just mentioned, like a lot of like these little scenarios. And then I think also just going to Ethiopia and reconnecting with like where I grew up, really, because even the way I moved was a very interesting experience, like losing my mom and like my grandma at the same time, and randomly having to move to a new country was a lot. So to even see my childhood home and realize I had a whole other life that existed before the one I have now, and that I'm still here and there's different chapters. So grieving my life and seeing it there also reminded me of my own mortality overall.
Do you ever think about that version of yourself that never left?
I think she's still with me. I always say that, especially, I think that's one of the things that has surprised me with, as I get older, is, you know, when you're a kid, you'll be like, when I grow up, you make up this character of yourself. Yeah. Like when I get older, I'm gonna be this person, when I get older, this. And one thing I've realized is I'm actually still her, like the younger me. And I always laugh when I see baby pictures of myself where I was always like grumpy or quiet or all these things, and I look at her and I'm like, I still feel like that person in just a different body.
Yeah.
So I didn't think I would still have a relationship with that person, or I would be so different, but I still feel like baby Yoru.
I think it's important, like with all these forces that are kind of acting on us as we grow up, to maintain as much of the inner child as we can.
Yeah.
Because I feel like every day is trying to be taken away.
Yeah.
So it's like it's important to kind of hold on to that as best we can. And I feel like it's easy to not to, like, you know, marriage, kids, all these things that are kind of like trying to push us forward. But I feel like keeping that inner kid alive is what allows us to live every day in a way that we can really like indulge and embrace the moment. Because like you said, you're speaking on mortality. One of those things happens a different way and the story is different.
Yeah.
So like, are there, and you don't have to speak unless you don't have to, but I know you spoke on like health. Is that something you're still dealing with, or is that like behind you?
No, I'm good now.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think it's just one of those things that you have to realize, like even your health is something that you should be grateful for. 100%. And when you're young, you don't really think about it because we take it for granted that our bodies are present with us, that we're able to walk, you're able to, you know, move around freely. But whenever that's threatened or you have to question it is when you realize how important it is. And I think that's one of the things that's another thing this year, like I'm really grateful to have like a body that I could utilize to do what I want. And that it's a privilege for me to say that. And yeah, like I feel this sense of euphoria within myself this year that's, I don't know, I'm not questioning things anymore. And it feels so freeing as somebody that always questioned where I need to be or having a plan. Yeah. And I don't have a plan. And I feel very happy not to for the first time.
Yeah. Do you feel free?
Yes, like very.
What's the most unconventional source of, I guess, place you've drawn like inspiration or motivation from?
Unconventional?
Yeah.
I guess pain. Like I hate that sometimes a lot of my inspiration is from a place of lacking. Like even with I don't know, like even with my film or like what I'm doing with Chucha Studios, like I named it out of like my grief and my pain of having to navigate life without my parents, you know? And then in the other sense, it does make me who I am. But I really want to challenge also myself to learn how to create stuff that's based on happiness and in memories. Even with a lot of my work, it's because of the barriers that we have within our community that I want to do the work. But I do want to channel drawing inspiration from happiness and things that are joyful. And I think as a creative who is also Black, I think sometimes it's really hard because a lot of our inspiration comes from our struggle of being also Black or being an immigrant or our experiences of being a woman and my different identities. But I want to learn how to celebrate some of my work and my inspirations.
Do you think the inspiration drawn from joy is as authentic as the creations you can draw from pain? Because I think a lot more people can connect with pain than joy. Like I feel like very few people can get to joy. Like we have happiness, we have fleeting moments of like contentment, but everybody deals with pain. So I feel like even though we want to create from a sense of happiness, I think that's like why when you see some type of like you see some acts were always happy or people are always happy, it doesn't look genuine because it's like no one is always happy. But then the mad person who's a genius may be an asshole, but we can understand. I know where you're working from because I've felt that pain. But like for you, how would you approach that? Like to make those creations from joy rather than the pain that you're accustomed to?
I think it's one of the things that's going to be like a challenge for me of like understanding it. And I feel like Black joy does exist. It's more of how do I draw inspiration from it. And I think that if at first I have to have that personal journey with myself before I can transform it or learn how to capture it. And that's one of the things that I also mentioned earlier is learning patience. I'm not, as much as I want things done in a certain way, or like I have these plans that I just mentioned, I'm at a point where I don't have a plan per se of certain things, and I want to take my time and be patient with myself. So even this concept of what does it look like to pull inspiration from joy rather than pain, I first have to understand it for myself. And that's the other thing that I always mention with this day in social media. You have this kind of like pressure to create content and everything to be moving fast. Like we're in this such like digestion of information and art that I don't even think people know why they're doing something, and they're just doing it because it's trendy and this idea of it. So I want to always, anything I do, just be patient with myself. Like, why am I doing this? Am I even aligned with what I'm trying to portray? Like, am I even welcoming joy within my life? Like, how is that even looking for myself before I start making it a thing that I'm creating? I have to first experience it before I could talk about it.
I agree. Last question I have for you is, who is Herrana?
Who is Herrana? Herrana is a friend, first a daughter, and a cousin and a niece for many people. And I am a human being who is trying to capture the world the way I see it. I think that's the best way I can describe myself. I want to feel that my legacy leaves people questioning why they're doing something, and to be intentional overall and question, why am I doing this, and does it align with what I believe in, and do I live that truth every day, or am I a performance?
No, I like it. So, I don't know if I asked you, what was the name of the movie?
The River.
The River, okay.
Yes.
And I don't know if you said late June?
Yes.
Okay.
So this summer, you could follow our Instagram page, Chucha Studios, and then also my personal page, Herrana the Great, and you can see some updates from there.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you for coming through.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Herrana, ladies and gentlemen.
Yay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. I ain't talking about the...
Guys, that's crazy.
Nah, the story was crazy.
Yeah.